Hello, and welcome to World of Warbirds. I'm Brian Pierce. Hello, Warbirders, and welcome to the final episode in my piston-powered Grumman Cat series. Up to now, I've described Grumman's series of not only winning, but war-winning single-engine naval aircraft. If you're just discovering this channel, you could step out to take in the F4F Wildcat, the F6F Hellcat, and the F8F Bearcat. Before we get into it, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell to never miss a thing. But even with all that single-engine success, Grumman seemed to have an itch that it just couldn't reach: to build a twin-engine naval fighter. It had tried with the XF5F, and yes, I have a video on that one too. It did climb like a homesick angel, so got the non-cat name of Skyrocket, but was cancelled after only one prototype due to a variety of matters. But Grumman never gave up on the twin-engine fighter. They actually worked on another prototype for the Army called the XP50 Interceptor. It was ordered by the U.S. Army Air Corps on March 11, 1939. It was basically a Skyrocket, but with a longer, sleeker nose. Within that nose would be nestled two 20mm cannon and two 50 caliber machine guns, and its two engines were turbo supercharged. The XP50 was doing well until its untimely demise when one of those turbo superchargers blew up, damaging the landing gear, causing the right landing gear to be stuck down, and the nose gear stuck up, with the test pilot unable to do either a belly or a normal landing. He bailed out, and the Skyrocket went into the waters of Long Island Sound. Along with the hopes for a Grumman twin-engine fighter? No. The obsession actually continued. Grumman was already working on another twin-engine follow-up to the Skyrocket XP50 that was called, internally, within the company, the Grumman G51. The G51 would be powered by two Pratt & Whitney R2800 double wasp air-cooled 18-cylinder radial engines, which cranked out 1,700 horsepower each. These engines would be contained in nacelles, partly hanging under the wings. The mid-mounted wings were thick, with a straight leading edge, tapered trailing edge, and significant dihedral. The fuselage was to be quite narrow, but tall, with the cockpit just in front of the leading edge of the wing. It was to use tricycle landing gear. The hope was that this basic design could be modified to produce fighters for use by both the USAAC and the US Navy. For high-altitude work, the Army version would need turbo superchargers, hopefully of the non-exploding variety this time. The Navy version would pass on the turbo superchargers, but would need arrestor hooks and folding wings for carrier operations. Both Army and Navy were interested in the design, but it was the USAAC that first placed an order for a prototype on the 19th of May 1941. The next month, in June 1941, the Navy ordered a prototype too, designated the experimental aircraft XF7F-1. Following the attack on Pearl Harbor, it was decided to simplify and streamline things for wartime production. The Army and the Navy weren't agreeing on what they each wanted for the twin-engine fighter. So it was decided that Grumman would focus on what it did best, making naval aircraft. And so the Army version was cancelled in January 1942. But the XF7F1 got the green light to continue to the prototype stage. Do you like what you're seeing? Why not click Super Thanks? I'd really appreciate it. So the good news was that on the 30th of June 1941, a contract for two XF7F1 prototypes was signed. The bad news was that on that very same day, two prototype XF6F1s, the aircraft that would become known as the Hellcat, were also ordered. Why was this bad news for the F7F? Because the single-engine Hellcat was deemed to be the "we gotta have this" priority, and there was only so much designing and engineering capacity. and so the nice-to-have F7F was pushed to the back burner. And there it sat for almost a year until spring 1943, when engineering work began in earnest, and by September they had a mock-up. And what a mock-up it was! If the theme of the Hellcat was to be a big but well-balanced Zero killer, and the Bearcat was less is more, the theme of the F7F would have to be bigger is better, or more is most, or something like that, because this bird was going to be a beast, kind of like a tiger, and so it was named the Tigercat. Grumman had tried to call it the Tomcat, but some prudes had decided that the name Tomcat was too sexy for the time, and so Tigercat was chosen instead. As I've said before, Grumman was a stubborn company, and eventually they would get to use the name Tomcat, but they were just going to have to wait a bit. At 45 feet 4 inches long, the Tigercat was 12 feet longer than the Hellcat, which was a big bird to begin with, and had 9 more feet of wingspan, and 3 more feet of height. Its empty weight tipped the scales at about 16,000 pounds, while the Hellcat's was just above 9,000. Let's put it this way, the Tigercat would weigh as much as a Hellcat plus a Bearcat. Now at least the Tigercat had a lot of power to haul it around. It didn't have double the weight of the Hellcat, but it did have double the power. With 2 Pratt & Whitney R2800 double wasp 18-cylinder air-cooled radial piston engines churning out 2,100 horsepower each. Now with all this bulk and power, you'd hope to be able to do a lot with the aircraft. And it was set up with the ability to hand out punishment on a surprising scale. Without a pesky engine in the nose, there was space to put in a lot of guns. There were 4 50 caliber machine guns in the nose, and before anyone starts whining about cannon, yes, it had them too. 4 20mm cannons were placed in the wing roots. So all of that would be great for dogfighting and strafing, but what about ground attack? From the very beginning, the Tigercat was designed to hand out serious pain. Racks and rails could carry 2 1,000-pound bombs or 8 127mm rockets under the wings. The tricycle landing gear gave enough clearance directly under the belly for the Tigercat to carry a torpedo, or a napalm bomb, or a 150-gallon fuel tank, or a kitchen sink. Just joking? Or am I? The prototype made its maiden flight in November 1943, and some changes were requested, including increasing the vertical fin and rudder height. Further testing revealed worries over the Tigercat's directional control if it lost an engine during a carrier launch or during a wave-off condition on landing. But the flight test reports also stated that, in addition to its potentialities as a night fighter, this airplane is the best medium-altitude day fighter, Army, Navy, or foreign yet evaluated. The test pilots were very impressed that even with its large size, the Tigercat provided increased speed, for example 70 miles per hour faster than its sister Hellcat, while carrying that heavy armament of 4 50 caliber machine guns and 4 20mm wing cannon. On the other hand, the Tigercat had worrisome spin characteristics. The Wildcat and Hellcat had been tested to 10-turn spins and would recover quickly. The Tigercat was initially tested up to only 2 turns because it took 2 full turns for it to reluctantly recover. And even then, it had the tendency for the nose to rise up and the spin to turn flat, which might prove unrecoverable. The Navy ended up writing in the pilot's handbook, all spins and snap rolls are prohibited maneuvers in F7F aircraft. Later on, a military test pilot did try to fully spin the Tigercat. As predicted, the spin went flat at the 4th turn, and it continued to flat spin for 20 more unrecoverable turns until it hit the ground, killing the test pilot. But even so, the type was plenty promising enough for an order of 500 units to be written up, and Grumman started building them. The Tigercat was ordered with the intention of being operated from the forthcoming 45,000-ton carriers of the Midway class. The first production Tigercats flew out of the factory in April 1944. This production run had the type configured as night fighters with an APS-6 radar in the nose, and soon a place for a radar operator's position was added behind the pilot, and the first few dozen Tigercats would be built as night fighters. In fact, the majority of the type would be used in this role, and due to the end of the war and the coming of the jets, only about 360 Tigercats were ever built. The slightly disappointing thing that needs to be said that there were problems in getting this carrier fighter onto an actual carrier. The first was that the Navy wanted a swiveling tailhook, and the Tigercat's hook was a new Y-frame configuration that the Navy found to be unacceptable. And so initially, Tigercats went to shore-based Marine squadrons. So the Marine squadrons began Tigercat combat training in mid-1944. F7F-2N night fighters were issued to the Marines on Guam in summer 1945, and these flew with Marine Night Fighter Squadron, VFM N-531, and arrived in Okinawa just as the war ended. Also, a Marine Photo Squadron started working up in March 1945. This also reaching Okinawa by VJ Day. Other photo recon Tigercat squadrons began operating in China, employed in mapping the coast. Meanwhile, back in the Navy, the Tigercat's minimum controllable and single-engine failure takeoff speed was 40 miles per hour faster than was the Navy requirement. This was worrisome, but the Tigercat's otherwise excellent performance and flight characteristics convinced the Navy to make an exception. In February 1946, Tigercats went aboard the Shangri-La for carrier qualifications. It must have been frustrating as heck when, after repeated carrier landings, an inner wing panel of one of the Tigercats failed on touchdown, causing the type to fail its carrier qualifications. I did say that Grumman was stubborn, and they went back to work on the Tigercat, and the final result was the F7F-4N. It had a strengthened airframe, a modified tailhook, and a more robust landing gear. It did pass its carrier qualification, although marginally, and never ended up being a standard carrier-based aircraft. They only built 12 of this variant. However, Tigercats got another task when some were modified to be drone control motherships. These had a rear cockpit for the drone control pilot installed. Interestingly, with an F8F Bearcat type canopy for him. So does that make this a Tiger Bearcat? With the outbreak of the Korean War, this kitty finally got to taste actual blood when two squadrons of Tigercats, VMF N-513 and 542, flew night interdiction, fighter, and ground support missions in the early months of the conflict. Following their withdrawal from the war, Tigercats were gradually phased out, and the type was formally retired in 1954. Because the Tigercats didn't fly much in combat, we don't have a list of pilots who became aces or have too many exceptional stories about the exploits of this bird. What we do have are the words of Captain Eric Melrose Winkle Brown, who was a British Royal Navy test pilot who, during his career, flew over 480 different types of aircraft. So he had plenty of experience and background and comparisons in mind when he penned the following tribute to the Tigercat. The Tigercat had never had the opportunity to demonstrate what it could do in combat. And by the time it did see operational service, the era of the jet fighter was already thoroughly established. The vast majority of the Tigercats built were thus destined to languish in rear areas or with reserve units without ever having an opportunity to fully realize their potential. If the Tigercat had shortcomings in the shipboard role for which it was conceived, it was, nevertheless, a very good aeroplane indeed. But less was scarcely expected from those responsible for such as the Wildcat and the Hellcat. It was robust, it was comfortable, and it offered an excellent performance. It deserves to be better remembered. Following Korea, many Tigercats became firefighters in the civilian world. They certainly had plenty of power to haul and drop flame retardant in a new series of battles, this time against the primal element of fire. These firefighting Tigercats still looked fairly sleek, even with the installation of a belly pod to carry the firefighting fluid. When I first saw a photo of a Tigercat modified in this way, my immediate thought was, yep, even this beautiful kitty can put on a little weight and a bit of a pot during middle age and still look good. The nice thing about the firefighting role was that it kept these cats working and airworthy during the years when many World War II Warbirds got scrapped. And once their second careers were coming to an end, there was now demand for these aircraft in private collections and museums, which means that the type is well represented. Airworthy ones can be seen at the National Museum of World War II Aviation in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and at Lewis Air Legends in San Antonio, Texas, amongst other locations. There are Tigercats on display at the National Naval Aviation Museum in Naval Air Station, Pensacola, Florida, and at the Planes of Fame Air Museum in Chino, California, and the Pima Air and Space Museum in Tucson, Arizona. So that brings us to the end of the piston banger Grumman Cats, but to the beginning of the Grumman Jet Cats. This is where my collaborator Tanner takes over. As a fighter pilot, she knows jets, and so our next video will be her look at the Grumman F9F Panther. If you enjoy this video, please do your part and become a member of the channel or drop me a super thanks. If you can't do either of those, then please just like and subscribe. It's really appreciated. Until next time.